Good afternoon. My name is Belinda Ensor. I promise to keep this as quick as I can because it is Friday afternoon and it's the end of the day, and I'm sure everybody has absorbed a lot of talk about significance. But today I'm going to talk to you about how your organisation can best prepare for a significance assessment. So as Bridget said, currently I work part-time for Museums Australia Victoria on Victorian collections, but since 2006 I have worked on and off as a consulting historian and have done a number of significance assessments. And just like Andrew was saying, walking into a collection, into a museum and seeing 25,000 items and having 2 days on site and then 5 days to write a report and 20 members of a committee saying, tell us everything you can, tell us everything you can. It is so overwhelming and it's a really difficult process, particularly if the collection is not in order. So in my experience, the organisations that get the most out of their significance assessments are organisations who have well-documented, well-catalogued collections, organisations who have good provenance, who are prepared for the assessment, who understand the process of the significance assessment, know why they're doing it, and know where the significance assessment will lead them. And I think that some organisations do significance assessments too early, and that it is much more valuable for an organisation to have the preparation done and to be prepared for the process before they undertake it. So let's talk about the preparation that an organisation needs to do. I think it's very important for an organisation to understand why they want a significance assessment. Why do you want a significance assessment? Do you see it as being a pathway to further funding? Do you see it as something that you can use as a promotion tool for marketing so that you can tell the world, bring them to your collection and say, look, we've got these items, they're nationally significant, they have state significance? Do you want to use it to prioritise your resources, to refine your collection management practices? And I think that before you start the process, the first thing to do is sit down as an organisation and write up a paragraph or two, which is why are you undertaking the assessment. And as Meredith mentioned, get everybody on board. This is an organisational decision, and this, if you do it well, can be a great turning point for your organisation. Find some money, which we've talked about already. Do some research and look at the dates. I think the next, the major funder is the National Library of Australia for the significance assessments, and the next round of funding is in March 2014. So before you even apply for the funding, start doing this preparation so that when the application rounds come up, your organisation is ready. So before you even think about finding the right consultant, you need to look at your own organisation. You need to find those pieces of collection policy that, in theory, everybody should use all the time and constantly refer to, but often they sit in dusty drawers and everybody forgets what they are. So your mission statement, your collection policies, look at the collection policy and see if people in your organisation adhere to it. Look at your catalogue records. Are your items well documented? And also, as Meredith mentioned again, sit down as a group and talk about the items that you think are going to be significant. Talk about your key items and talk about your key collection areas. So, read your collection policy documentation. Have a look at where the documentation came from. Did your organisation go through the museum accreditation process 10 years ago? Does anyone in the organisation have any idea about where those documents came from and whether they still work? And are they relevant or have the thematic guidelines around what you're collecting changed? So that also comes down to looking at the history of your collection and the history of your organisation. So what the original focus of the collection was and how that's changed. And this is where the key historical themes and the key historical framework comes in. can you identify key framework, key themes that run through your collecting as an organisation over time, and how your key objects might relate to this? So before you even think about getting a consultant in, you have to have an understanding about what your key themes are. So make a list of them and sit down and make a list of the key items in your collection. Make a list of the people that have shaped the way that your organisation has grown. That's really important. And if you can, include their phone numbers and their email addresses, and go and talk to them. Talk to the person who set up the organisation. Talk to the people who were on the committee for 15 years but have retired and are sitting at home 2 blocks away from the museum with all this organisational knowledge. Also, it might be worth talking to your community. So talk to the former committee members and the key volunteers. Perhaps have an open day and talk to people on the day. Draw anecdotal evidence from your visitor book. Talk to your staff, talk to the people on the floor. The people on the floor will have so much anecdotal evidence for you. They will say to you, everybody who comes in asks me about these 4 objects. Those are the people who know what objects in your collection get the most love. Think about also your building and your location and how that has shaped your collection as well, and whether that plays a part in it. So all of this is happening before you have even thought about your consultant. One of the key things to do is understand what your consultant is going to do for you. Think about your budget, and that is a key thing, to be realistic about what your consultant can give you. 2 days usually on site with a National Library of Australia grant, and then 5 to 10 days of write-up. So the more that you can give them, and the better prepared you are, the better prepared they will be. You can also think about the type of significance assessment that you want to have. So there are sort of 3 types of significance assessments. You can have somebody come in and do a whole collection assessment, or potentially you can get somebody to come in and do a sub-collection. Or you can have someone come in and do specific single items. The type of assessment that you're having may depend on your grant. However, if it's up to you, I would recommend that even though it's tempting to ask somebody to do the whole collection, particularly if your documentation is not great, I recommend that you get someone in to do a sub-collection that has great provenance, a sub-collection that you know lots about and that you suspect is quite important. And then when you're looking for that sub-collection, think about something that is specific to your collection. So whether it's something that's specific to your region or specific to your special interest. You also need to work out a time frame and draw up a contract with your consultant. So what's your time frame? What's their time frame? Do you have any key dates where you're going to be too busy doing other things? If it's Anzac Day, if you have a working bee, if you have an open day, make sure that you have your significance assessment on the other part of the year from it. And also make the arrangements so that all of this is done before you contract anyone. Before we were talking about finding an appropriate consultant. It depends on the type of collection you have, but you might get a historian, an archivist, a museum curator, a heritage librarian, or some other type of expert with experience in preparing a significance assessment. Sometimes, even though somebody is an expert in your specialist area, they might not be an expert in doing significance assessments. I think that if your collection is very specialised and you feel like, in the case where you might want someone who has the second language, you may wish to include in your application that they get somebody with a historical background who can speak both languages, get some specialised significance training so that they do your assessment well. And generally speaking, it's recommended that you don't use someone from within your organisation because it's really great to get an outside perspective. But there are sort of 3 key places to get consultants, and that is through Museums Australia Victoria, through the Professional Historians Association, and through other organisations like the Australian Society of Archivists. And if you go onto the National Library of Australia's website and look at the significance assessment grants, you can go through the previous years and you can see which consultants have done previous assessments. So if you have a similar collection, it might be the person for you. Now we're getting to the point where we are doing our assessment. And I would say, firstly, you should enjoy yourself, because it is a rare opportunity where you get to take stock. And it's a rare opportunity where you get to bring a professional in and have them captivated to look at your collection and to give it the attention and the love it deserves. So you should enjoy yourselves. And this is an opportunity for your organisation to make a big step. While this is all happening, you should also copy and share all of your documentation and your preparation notes and give them to the consultant before they even come on site, so that before they get there, they understand about your region, they understand about your collection, and they're prepared and on site during the day. You also might find it useful to delegate a key contact for your consultant to liaise with. So one person who is the point of contact, who has the time to to take calls and to do field research, especially if you're in a remote setting. And you need to make time for your consultant and physically isolate and identify the items that they're coming in to see, because there is nothing worse than having someone drive 3 hours to see your collection only for you to not be able to find the items that they're there to see. Find them, clear them a workspace, set them up, and get the most you can out of them and their time there. Once the assessment's done, it's really important that you sit down with your consultant and talk about it. So get a copy, read it, take it away, think about it, talk about it as an organisation, invite them in, sit down and talk about it, ask questions. Don't be afraid to challenge things if you feel uncomfortable about parts of your assessment. It's really important. It's a hard job to deliver news to people that the item that they thought was incredibly significant is actually probably not as significant as they thought. But having a conversation about it makes it sort of much easier, and it sort of means that you are able to start using your assessment. And this is really the fun bit. So once the assessment's done, this is just the beginning of the process for your organisation. And you can start to do all kinds of exciting things, some less exciting than others, but incorporating your assessment into your collection management policies, sort of starting to talk to the community around your collection about what's happening and the stakeholders, and keeping everybody informed. Reviewing your collection policies to decide that, oh, we seem to have 30,000 items and we've never really been very judicious about how we acquire things. Perhaps this is the moment where we can start changing our policies and sticking to them. And also start thinking about including in your donor forms a statement of significance as every item comes in. Start prioritising your resources. Sometimes significance assessments funded by the National Library, like the Racing Museum Significance Assessment, lead on to additional funding for preservation, conservation. So you will often use your significance assessment to springboard into bigger things. So lobbying, funding for future grants. And even if you are not required to include your significance assessment in a grant application, it shows that you're a serious organisation who has done some planning and done some thinking. And it's a great thing to include and a great thing to use to lobby local government. Use your assessment to promote and market your organisation. I think this is the most exciting part about having a significance assessment, because all of a sudden you know we've got these 20 items, nobody else in the state has them, they're amazing, we're going to make them the heroes of our collection, maybe just for a little while, but the heroes of your collection. So use the significance assessment as an opportunity to do new things. Call the local paper, call the local radio station, tell them you've had this assessment, it's really exciting, that you're going to put all of the items that got state significance out on display, if that's possible. You know, get the items, post them on Victorian Collections, including the quotes from your assessor saying why they're significant, and share them with people, share them with the world. Change your exhibitions, do an oral history project, produce new souvenirs and postcards, anything that you're doing in your organisation in terms around interpretation. This is a moment for you to make a change and to do something really exciting with your assessment. And it also means that your interpretation and exhibitions can get better. So incorporating the way that a professional has talked about your collection into your interpretation is a really exciting opportunity. And mostly you can use your assessment to change the way that your organisation's future is planned. So understand the recommendations and then start doing that planning around it. So the assessment might reveal things that you don't agree with or that culturally within your organisation are very hard to hear. But try to be open-minded, and perhaps those recommendations may sit on a shelf for 5 or 10 years, and perhaps they will never get addressed, but having them documented is very important. And those recommendations that your organisation does wish to take on board should be wrapped into your strategic planning. This is also a moment where you can reflect on the time, reflect on how the assessment went, and whether, especially if it was just a sub-collection, and think about if you were to have another assessment, how you would go about doing a better job of providing information and how the process might work better for you. And take it as an opportunity to add additional research to your collection. So you've got these significant items that have been identified, put it in your catalogue records at the very least. But maybe if these things have been identified as very significant, you want to get your volunteers or your staff to do additional research, and you want to expand on what's already been done. Whatever you do, don't leave your significance assessment in a drawer or in the back of your collection store. Do something with it. Do something with it. Do anything with it. Quote from it. Try and use it for lots of things. And remember that significance is not fixed, and that the significance of items does change over time through all kinds of situations. So a significance assessment that was done now may be very different to one that your organisation, particularly if you continue to collect provenance and to update your collection records, who knows what you will find. Significance assessments are a real opportunity and a turning point. So embrace the process and do the preparation and do the significance assessment at the right time, and this is the right, then it will be incredibly invaluable for your organisation.
I just had a question. You mentioned in your talk that it's recommended to have a consultant come in rather than an internal person. If there's no funding available or you sort of need an internal person, what's the comparison? How's it viewed? Is it viewed very differently if it's done internally, or?
Well, I guess that in terms, if you don't have any funding and the alternative is that there will be no significance assessment, then someone internal, of course, is a good choice. But generally speaking, it's really great to get an outside perspective, someone who doesn't have a connection to the collection, because it's very hard to be unbiased when assessing a collection. And I guess that the role is for that person in the organisation who is the expert. It's their role to support the consultant, so really communicate and to work together.
Thank you.
Belinda, when you put in the application for the National Library, do you have to name your consultant already?
No, you don't.
No.